This week we talked to Natalie Goldberg, author of 3 Simple Lines, A Writer's Pilgrimage into the Heart and Homeland of Haiku. It's about the power of haiku.
You meet it with your life, and it means whatever it does for you. If it really works, it meets you wherever you are.
Welcome to Writer's Voices with Monica and Caroline. I'm your host, Monica Hadley, and with me is my mother, Caroline Kilborn.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're warm.
Well, we are cold today in Iowa. Well, actually, we're warm inside our nice, snug houses, but I woke up this morning.
God.
It was 0 degrees.
Well, it's 21 now, so we're gaining ground.
Yeah, we are. And that, I would like to make a point, is Fahrenheit, 0 Fahrenheit. Because 0 centigrade isn't that bad.
Well, we can thank the sun for our gaining in temperature. So
true. And the sun is probably a topic that haiku writers write about at times.
Oh, I'm sure.
Mom, why don't you introduce our guest today?
It's my pleasure to introduce Natalie Goldberg. And Natalie is the author of 3 Simple Lines, A Writer's Pilgrimage into the Heart and Homeland of Haiku. Now, she is the author of 15 books, including the classic bestseller Writing Down the Bones, which has changed the way writing is taught in the United States. The beloved memoir Long Quiet Highway, the novel Banana Rose, Living Color, about her painting, and her legacy book, The True Secret of Writing. She has taught writing as a practice for the past 45 years, nationally and internationally, and she lives in northern New Mexico. And welcome to the program. We're very happy to have you today.
Thank you very much. I thought it was cold here. It was 21.
Oh,
but it's going to go up to the 40s today, and with the sun out, it'll be pretty warm. But it reminds me of the old Midwest where I lived in Minneapolis and got a real taste of cold.
Yes, that I think it gets colder up there even than it is here.
Oh yeah, it does.
So Natalie, I just want to tell you how excited I am to have you on Writer's Voices. I have known of you since the Writing Down the Bones days. I know that there were quite a few people here in Fairfield who followed your methods of writing as a practice, and so I do want to talk about that a little bit. But first, tell us about this new book.
Yeah, the new book is what I really care about now. I'm kind of talked out about Writing Down the Bones. People know all about it, and even though I love it and respect it, it came out in 1986. This new book, 3 Simple Lines, I followed haiku. I studied with Allen Ginsberg in 1986. I drove up from Taos, New Mexico, to study with him at the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics.
Does that school still exist?
Yes, it does.
Whoa.
I think it's just called Naropa Institute now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I studied with him for 6 weeks only, but I'll never forget when he told us about haiku. It's very different than sometimes in Iowa and where I was brought up in New York. We studied maybe haiku as 5, 7, 5 syllables. And you make a little poem, and the teachers probably used it as a way for grammar school kids to count syllables. But really what he explained and was so opening for me is that really in Japanese language, every syllable counts and has a lot of power. But they don't have words like the, and. So we count those as syllables, and it takes away from the power. We don't have enough words. We don't have enough syllables to express what we want. So he said, so in English, you can do just 3 short lines, but the real test of a haiku is when you hear one, you feel a sensation of space, a small sensation of space. And he paused, and then he said, which is nothing less than God. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes,
and this
is
this was in 1976, and I never forgot it. And then he also he said the great Japanese haiku writers are Basho, Busan, Shiki, and Issa. So I wrote that down, and there's a lot of them. And the other thing he said that's important, and I really see that, he said the translation is everything. Because I've picked up haiku books where the translation wasn't good, and I had no interest in haiku. But if you hear a good translation, it's a whole world. And maybe what I should do is read you a few. And then also when Alan said all that and named the haiku writers, I remember thinking, I was 26 years old, thinking, well, what about the women?
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, Natalie, just take down all these notes. You'll find the women. There have to be women there. So I did find a woman, and I found out that she, like the male haiku writers in Japan in the 1700s, actually was a very serious poet, and I have a whole chapter on her in this book. And she had haiku disciples, just like the men did. You know, disciples like as though it was a Zen religion, where they studied the path and the way of haiku. And Busan, who came after Basho, many of your listeners might know Basho from the Journey to the Deep North, where he put a backpack on and walk for 6 months and writing haiku, keeping a journal, writing prose and then haiku, prose and haiku. And Basho is the one who I love. He influenced my writing so much because he said, if you want to know about a tree, go to the tree.
Right.
Don't let anything interfere between you and the tree. And that has really helped my writing altogether. So maybe I'll read you. Here's a haiku by Shiki, and your listeners, I'll read it twice and see if you can feel. Don't try or strain. Just relax and receive the haiku and see if you feel an experience of space. And I'll read a few others so you'll get it at some point. Peeling
I get
a pear. Okay, here's Shiki. Peeling a pear, a trickle of sweet juice along the blade. Peeling a pear, a trickle of sweet juice along the blade. How many times have we seen that, but never thought of writing about it or really seeing it? I mean, hearing that haiku, now I'll notice that. A trickle of sweet juice. Here's another one by Issa. Dear, dear, what a fat, happy face it has, this peony.
Oh.
Dear, dear, what a fat, happy face it has, this peony. And here's one by Busan. So it can go, I'm giving you examples, the emotions can go all over. The piercing cold in our bedroom, stepping on my dead wife's comb. The piercing cold in our bedroom, stepping on my dead wife's comb. And often haikus always honor in some way the weather, the season. So the piercing cold. So let's see, I'll read you just a few more to get you going in the haiku way. Oh, this one was very important to me. actually, it was after reading this one is when I decided to go to their graves, and I write about it. I went to Busan's grave to thank him. I went to Japan and found his grave. I'll read this one to you. Ah, grief and sadness. The fishing line trembles in the autumn breeze. Ah, grief and sadness. The fishing line trembles in the autumn breeze. And when I found Busan's grave, it was right near Basho's hut. Busan was born soon after Basho died, and he followed him and was dedicated to him. And he and a bunch of friends found Basho's hut, and it was just down to dirt, and they reassembled it and built it, and they made a vow that every year they would meet for a weekend at the hut and drink sake and write haiku. So it was a real way in the world.
When you talk about the way of haiku and that they followed the way of haiku, what does that really mean, and how is it like or unlike the way of Zen?
Well, it's different because the way of Zen, you practice meditation. And with the way of haiku, you practice writing haiku. Here's a paragraph from the book that I think will say something about it. What is the way of haiku? Bare attention, no distractions, pure awareness, noticing only what is in the moment, being connected to seasons, unconnected to self-clinging, and then out of that, composing your experience in 3 lines that go beyond logic, that make the mind leap. In the center, a taste of emptiness, a frog, a crow, a turnip. The ordinary right in front of you is the realm of awakening, pure Zen, but not Zen. So I think I anticipated your question.
I think you did.
Yeah. Here's one by Basho. How I long to see among the morning flowers the face of God.
Mm.
See, when you listen to those, you almost have to pause and
yes, exactly,
and let it sink in, which makes it a little hard to conduct an interview.
Oh no, that's it. That's a beautiful thing that you just said, and I think it's true, and it's a great thing for now because it's a hard time now. It's a really hard time, and people who read this book have been saying it's such a relief to go. We're so full of aggravation right now and worry and concern, and this is. Haiku. In a way, it doesn't make you not feel, but it feels in a deeper, below discursive thinking and worry, into a deeper place in your heart. Here's one, and in some of the chapters, I tell about their lives. The haiku writers, they had very unusual lives. Isa, I'm going to read you this because he lost his mother when he was 3 years old, and he wrote his first haiku when he was 6. Mm. Come, play with me, you, little sparrow, motherless sparrow.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one he wrote when he was 6?
6
yes.
years.
Oh, wow.
It was his first haiku. And actually, Isa is probably the most beloved in Japan. He has a very tender heart, and he's also very funny. Here's one. Sitting on her eggs, the chicken admires the peony. I love that one. Sitting on her eggs, the chicken admires the peony. So here we have, without saying it, hitting it over the head, we know that it's summer. You know, the season is in it, but it doesn't say the season. Go ahead, make love, summer cicadas. That's Isa. But Isa actually is very funny and also had a very hard life. He left home at 14 because his mother had died, and his father married a mean, mean stepmother, and so he left and didn't return till his father died, and he was supposed to inherit the home, but the woman wouldn't give it to him. So he waited another 10 years, and then he finally went back to his hometown, married a woman, had 3 children, and one by one they all died. And he adored his daughter. Here's a haiku for this daughter. In a dream, my daughter lifts a melon to her soft cheek. I mean, it goes right in, doesn't it? In a dream, my daughter lifts a melon to her soft cheek.
Now, Natalie, in Japanese, are these 5-7-5 syllables?
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
But they're not translated that way.
Right. And if you tried to translate them that way, you would lose something.
Yeah, you would lose something, I think.
Yeah.
Though people try to, and but you can feel that it brings you to yourself again. Here's another one by Isa. Mother, I weep for you as I watch the sea. Each time I watch the sea. It's so penetrating. And then, get out, little sparrow. Get out of the way. Mr. Horse is coming.
Yeah, you can picture that, can't you?
Yeah.
You're listening to Writers' Voices with Monica and Caroline, and our guest today is Natalie Goldberg, author of 3 Simple Lines. Natalie, in the book you have a chapter about when you were practicing haiku, and I'm assuming that you've done this for many years, but I think when you joined a haiku group. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know where this book was going. I didn't know if it was supposed to be about me writing haiku or about all these great people that I discovered in Japan or, just everything. So I put it all in the book. So one of the things I did was I looked up, and it turns out all over the country, people are writing haiku. There are haiku conferences probably every week of the year someplace. And so I looked up and I found that there was actually a haiku group in Santa Fe that met once a month. And I really am not good at haiku. So I joined it. And nobody made any big deal about me. There were about 12 people. It was at the library the last Tuesday of the month. And we'd go over each other's haiku. And so I went to it, and they would just, you could feel when we'd go around first and just read a haiku twice with no comment. But even, when you read something aloud, you can feel without anyone saying anything if it's good or not, or if it connects. And I would read these haikus month after month, and you felt they just fell like a dead horse. They were terrible. And but I didn't care. In a way, it was fun for me not to be the star, for me not to be the teacher, for me to be the worst in the class. And I kept saying to them, please, any comments, it's okay. Say anything you want. I just want to learn. And at the end of each class, someone would always pull me aside and say, well, if you want to learn about haiku, read a lot of them and write a lot of them. And I thought, oh, my God, that's exactly what I tell my writing students for writing. But for haiku, I was just a little stuck. And can I read you this little part? It's
Sure.
right here?
Yes, would love to hear
Okay.
it.
Because it connects to what we're talking about. The summer before I leave for Japan, I write this haiku. This black pen feels meaty in a writer's hand. Please don't imagine that my decades of writing practice and Zen meditation have silenced or fully pacified the angry self-critics in my head. That's not how things work. I'm just much better at managing those voices. After I write that haiku, my inner critic rises up and skewers me. What does a black pen have to do with this beautiful July day? Meaty? Give me a break. You think you're a writer? Since when? Next it goes for the jugular, unadorned and raw. It leaps. I hate you. You're stupid. And so I had to face that when I went to the group. But because I understand about the critic that we all have, I didn't let it stop me.
Well, not a lot of people who are as accomplished a writer as you, I think, would be as open to criticism. I think that really speaks a lot for your way.
Yeah, I'm brutal. You could be brutal. I'm not brutal with my students. I never comment at all. I give them a lot of space. But maybe that's true. That might be true. I haven't taught a haiku class yet, but I think I will be in the future, only because it'll get me writing them, and I'm kind of goo-goo about it. Here's one that Basho wrote to his students. Don't imitate me. It says boring as two halves of a melon. I love that one, but I also always think, what do you mean? I like melons.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and so I kept going to this class, and it was really, and sometimes there was just knockout stuff written, and I would just be in awe, and I really look forward to it. I'd walk there. It was downtown, and I'd walk there. And then finally, when I got one that, was good, or I don't even know good, they kind of nodded. And secretly, I wanted to do somersaults through the whole room. I felt so happy.
Aww.
It was really fun. And I still go to it.
Now, that group doesn't adhere to the 5-7-5.
No, it does not. But it has to be, you can't do 5 long sentences. It still has to be 3 short lines.
Well, it seems like the ones that you chose to put in the book tend to be shorter than 5-7, fewer syllables.
Yes. Yeah, because they're translated. They're not, they're translated. So they're, they're so beautiful and poignant. Here, I'm sorry, but I keep reading them. This is what it's about.
Obviously, you are excited about this.
Yeah. No trail to follow where the teacher has wandered off, the end of autumn. In a way, I'll read it again. It's subtle and beautiful. And this teacher means, a teacher that you study with in a deep way. No trail to follow where the teacher has wandered off, the end of autumn. So these things stop you in your shoes.
Yeah.
The thing about haiku is that you can put so many different, you can put your own feelings into it and your own understanding of it, and that doesn't mean that's what the poet meant, but you get that. I don't know. I just really like it.
Yeah, no, exactly. You meet it with your life, and it means whatever it does for you.
Yeah.
But that, if it really works, it meets you wherever you are.
I think that's why people like it so much. I really do.
Yeah. I found out that people really love haiku. And I wrote this to, I've always kind of secretly loved it, but never talked much about it. And then I went to Japan and found Busan's grave, and then I got carried away. I went to find Basho's grave, and I went to Shiki, who had an incredible life that I write about here. He coughed his first blood at 13, and he had TB, and he died in his early 30s. And he was in a lot of pain, but he continued. Now, this is very Iowa, I think, because I think of Iowa this way. He was determined, and he continued. And he had many disciples. And it's really because of him, he died in 1902, that we have haiku today, because he allowed such a big world to enter haiku. But in his last 5 years, he was so sick, he was bedbound his whole 5 last years. But every morning he'd drag himself by his elbows to the edge of his tatami, slide open the door, and sit for the day and look out at his garden and wait for haiku. And I have a photo of him on my desk and sitting there looking out at the garden, and it's on my writing desk to inspire me.
Now, it seems like these Japanese haiku masters all wrote about death as well.
Yes. Well, yes, because death is a real thing. That's going to happen.
It is? What?
Yeah, what? That's going to happen to everybody. So it's one of the things that is included. That's true of Zen, too. And let me tell you, that has to be true if you want to be a good writer. You don't even have to write about it, but you have to have it at your back. You can't deny it.
What about birth? Do they write about birth, too?
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah, the women. The women do.
Ah.
Do you want to hear? Well, let me write. This is a chapter on Chione, a woman haiku writer I found.
Oh, yes. I'd love to hear about her.
Yeah. Woman's desire, deeply rooted, the wild violets. Okay. Eventually, whose skin will they touch? Rouge flowers. Change of kimono, showing only her back to the blossom's fragrance. I mean, you can hear how different they are.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm sure. What time period did she live in?
She lived in the 1700s too.
Wow.
Yeah, the 1700s. Here's one when she got older. Oh, here I go again. When she was old. But it's not about death yet.
Okay.
My energy can only defeat a butterfly this spring morning.
I love that one. Can you read that one again?
Yes. My energy can only defeat a butterfly this spring morning.
Of course, you'd have to have an awful lot of energy to catch a butterfly.
Yeah. Or to write a haiku. Here, you want to hear I'll read you just a few more contemporary. Contemporary means the early 20th century.
Sure.
I'll read you just a few. This one really fits now with what's going on. Haiku poet, caring mother. This summer, I'm a wreck.
Oh.
I'll read that again. Haiku poet, caring mother. This summer, I'm a wreck.
When was that written?
Another? That was written around, well, she was I should say her name, Sugita Hisajo. She was alive from 1890 to 1946.
Wow, it does sound like it was written yesterday.
Yeah. And this one I want to read you too, because this woman died in 1951. Takashita Shizunojo. Filled up with grief and anger, I spit out black, black watermelon seeds. I'll read it again. Filled up with grief and anger, I spit out black, black watermelon seeds. And you know what season it is. She doesn't tell you, but it's watermelon, so it's summer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's very graphic. You can really see that.
Yeah. Once I found the women, they're very strong. Oh, this one you'll like. Hashimoto Takako, 1899, 1963 she died. The fierce snowfall. I'll die having known no hands other than my husband's.
Wow.
That is an Iowa haiku.
Yeah.
Let me read it again. The fierce snowfall. I'll die having known no hands other than my husband's. Haiku is a very powerful form. And, I didn't realize till I finished it and wrote the epilogue that the whole thing, even though I hardly mention him throughout, that it was an homage to Allen Ginsberg and his presenting it to me, haiku in the early years of my life.
And you write in here, I think it might be in that epilogue about like feeling this unexplained grief.
Yes.
You want to tell that story?
Okay. Well, actually, I'll tell you too, interesting as far as writing. I finished the book, and then about 2 months later, I had this idea for an epilogue. And then I thought, Nat, it has nothing to do with the book. And then I said, just write it and shut up. So I wrote it. And I put it at the end of the book, and it clearly worked. And it was about me in 1997. I rented I kind of rented an apartment in Mill Valley for 2 weeks, and I was working on a book that was very difficult for me to write. And while I couldn't sleep, and so for 4 nights I couldn't sleep. And you know what it's like not to sleep. You're crazy. And I was walking around almost like a drunk. But I was so determined to get to the library every day and work on that book. So I went to the library on the 4th day and finally gave in and just walked outside and wandered around in this hill town. And I sat down on a stoop, really, of someone's house. And I looked up, and all of a sudden I could actually physically see the wind blowing. And then I just started sobbing and sobbing. And I didn't know why. And then I got up, and I was hungry, and I went to a cafe, and I thought, oh, I feel relieved. I go into this cafe, and I remember what I ordered. I ordered a hamburger and French fries. And while I was waiting, I picked up a local paper, and the front of the paper said, Allen Ginsberg died. And I was so shocked and blown out that when the hamburger and French fries came, I just paid the bill and walked out. But I never till now, when I wrote the epilogue, connected the two. Sometimes we're so dumb. Connected the two, that my crying, someplace in me knew that he died. And also in Tibetan Buddhism, the wind often means the spirit after someone dies is being taken. And so without knowing it, and I didn't connect it till I wrote this book, that I was grieving Allen Ginsberg.
Natalie, would you read the haiku you wrote for Allen?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. It's at the end. I wrote 2. So
Yes.
should I read both of them?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see if I can find. I can. This is odd. Oh, I see. I can't even find my own epilogue. Okay, here it is. So at the end, by the way, I did get to know Alan after I wrote Writing Down the Bones. We ended up teaching together in L.A. 2 different occasions. So here, Alan, I wrote these for you. Allen Ginsberg, Far Beyond 17 Syllables. And then this one. Spring wind blossomed you into another world. Spring wind blossomed you into another world.
I think it's pretty cool that he said farewell to you in the way he did.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And that it took me
20 years to figure it out.
Yeah.
Or
I'm
something.
slow. Like when I read that haiku by Busan, Grief and Sadness, I vowed that I would go to his grave and thank him. But it took me 19 years to go. So we make these pledges, and you'll come around to it. Be patient. Be patient, but also sometimes, I'm going to find this for you. I want to read this to you. Be patient, but at the same time, when I went to his grave, Busan's grave, I found something he had written that was very poignant. So on the one hand, be patient, and on the other hand, listen to this that I'm going to read you, that he wrote. What you want to acquire, you should dare to acquire by any means. What you want to see, even though it is with difficulty, you should see. You should not let it pass, thinking there will be another chance to see it or to acquire it. It is quite unusual to have a second chance to materialize your desire.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
You know, the thing I find really interesting about that is that we have this idea that that the Eastern spiritual paths are all anti-materialist, and yet this is saying materialize your desires.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
And hopefully your desires are not just for a new car and a fancy house. Your desire is about waking up, about writing haiku, about writing the memoir you want to write, about painting.
You're listening to Writers' Voices with Monica and Caroline, and our guest today is Natalie Goldberg, author of 3 Simple Lines. Natalie, has haiku changed over the time? Because you have studied it from, 300 to 400 years ago up until the present. And is that when it actually started, is the history of haiku even earlier?
Well, haiku was used as the first 2 lines of a renge poem, where you'd get a party and you'd write little cute poems and stuff. But Basho was the one who made it serious in the 1700s. No, in the 17th century, the 1600s. He made it as a serious practice. Took the first 2 lines, or the first 3 lines, and separated it and made it a deep practice, the way of haiku. And yes, it has changed, not the form, but people are modern, so they put in, like I read you, more modern, the women. You put in, here, I can read you. Do you know the novelist, the great writer Richard Wright from Mississippi, who wrote Native Son and Black Boy?
Yes.
He's a wonderful writer. And in the last 4 years of his life, he had it with America. He was black, and he moved to Paris the same way James Baldwin did. But for James Wright, it was at the very end of his life. The last 4 years, he was very sick, and he wrote haiku. And he not only, and interesting, he wrote 575, but he wrote haiku, like when I say haiku, hundreds of them, and you can get a whole book of Richard Wright's haiku. And it comforted him and fascinated him in his sickness in the last 4 years. I'll read you just a few. Settling on the, and don't forget he's living now in Paris. Settling on the screen of the crowded movie house, a white butterfly. While crows are cawing, poppies are dutifully deepening their red. Do you feel that? And it's very subtle. They're very, very subtle and wonderful.
Yeah, there is so much in that one because,
I know.
The poppy fields
Yeah.
that we connect with.
Exactly.
With
it
cemeteries.
He really, yes,
Yeah.
he sunk really deep.
Wow.
In a freezing haze, the lowing of distant cows fogs the window panes. In a freezing haze, the lowing of distant cows fogs the window panes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, beautiful. And it comforted him. It'd be wonderful for people now during this time to read haiku. And people have said to me, I've read your book now, and it just saved my life. Because it takes you away or takes you deeper, but not quite, where we are now. Here's one by Aim.
Yeah, and
Pardon?
It's not above our understanding. See,
yes, no,
it's above our understanding. So
it's very simple. It's very simple, and anyone can write haiku. That's what's so wonderful about it.
Yeah, right.
I'm looking now if I could find. I'm going to read a few. Jack Kerouac, who wrote On the Road, was very into haiku. Missing a kick at the icebox door, it closed anyway. Do you see? And it took a moment. You didn't get it right away. Missing a kick at the icebox door, it closed anyway.
Oh.
In my medicine cabinet, the winter fly has died of old age.
Oh my gosh.
In my medicine cabinet, the winter fly has died of old age. See, everything can be the subject of haiku. Nothing is more important than anything else.
Anything or everything.
Yeah. Now this one I love. It's so kind of quiet. This is Jack Kerouac again. Empty baseball field. A robin hops along the bench. Very simple. So I want to send all of you out now to go write haiku.
Yeah, you got me going.
Now, Natalie, somewhere in the book you said something about someone had said something about being a master if you've written 10 haiku.
Oh yeah, Basho said. And this maybe wasn't a good thing for me to write because I honored haiku so much it froze me. But he didn't mean this at all. Basho wrote, if you write 5 haiku, you're a haiku writer. If you write 10, you're a master. And I thought he meant shooting for the moon. But actually, maybe it's because I know you're at the other end from Iowa, and I love the Midwest and its ordinariness. That's a compliment. When I just recited it, I thought I read it wrong. He just meant to write them.
That that anyone could do it.
Yeah. I never realized that.
Well, because what I thought it meant was that if you could write hundreds in your life and only 10 would be, if you had 10 that were really good, that meant you were a master.
I think that's what he really meant. But suddenly when I was talking to you, it opened it up for me.
Oh.
It gave me a freedom.
Wow.
That it didn't have to be the best ever.
Now, in this book, you write about these 4 men that Allen Ginsberg told you about, but then also the woman that we spoke about earlier. But you're also writing about your trip to Japan and meeting people there, and particularly the retired abbot, who wanted to meet you because of writing down the bones, but you had no idea that you had a greater connection with him, so you almost brushed him off. But
I didn't know. Mitsue, who's Japanese, met me at the plane because it's hard in Japan. Everything's in kanji, so you don't know, and nobody speaks English. So she met me at the airport, and and I'm in a daze because I've been traveling and I'm jet lagged. And this is very much sort of Asian. I don't mean to stereotype, but I've experienced this a lot. It's very ordinary. She said, "Oh, I met someone in Takayama who read your book and would like to meet you." I thought, "Oh no, I don't want to," and I knew it was Writing Down the Bones because it's the only book translated to Japanese. So I thought, I don't want to meet some young student. I'm tired, and this trip is for me. So I said to her, "Oh, well, in 3 weeks when we get back to Kyoto, tell him to meet us in Kyoto." And I thought, "Oh, good. He'll never do it, and, it'll be fine." And so, I forgot about it, and I didn't know who it was. And as I write about in the book, it unfolds as we're going on the bus back to Kyoto at the end of the trip. Joan Halifax, the Zen teacher who was on the trip with us, who led the trip, sat down next to me and said, "Harada Roshi is coming to meet you." And Roshi means Zen master. And she said, "Oh, he's in his 80s, and he's just terrific. You're going to love him." And I looked at her and said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You don't know?" I said, "No, I don't know anything." So then Mitsue came over to me and said, before that, she said, "This person's on the phone. He wants to meet you in Kyoto. He wants you to come to the train station." I said, "Oh, for God's sakes, let him come to the Hyatt. We were going to stay. I was just dying for a hot bath." And I said, "Oh, let him just come to the Hyatt when he gets to Kyoto." So she says, "Okay." And then suddenly I realized, and I ran after her. I said, she said, "I already wrote him." I said, "Wait a minute. Is that Harada Roshi you're talking about?" She said, "Yeah, he's coming to see you." I said, "You're kidding. Why didn't you tell me?" And it turns out, and it was this really big deal. So I write about it in this book, and I write all about it. We became quite close, and it turns out he was best friends with Katagiri Roshi, who I studied with for 12 years in Minnesota. Mm. And he was so moved to see Katagiri in the book because he kind of vanished from Japan. And in a way, I've made Katagiri famous in the U.S. because if you read my other books, there are a lot about him or about my relationship with him or what he taught me. So it was very, very moving. And I FedExed overnight the book to, you'll love this, to Harada. And when the book came out, he was very much looking forward to it. because I went back to Japan and visited Takayama, which I write about in the book. And so Mitsue connected us so we could do Zoom, and Mitsue translated after he got the book, and he knew all about the book. And I said to him, I said to Mitsue, who translated, how can he understand the book? He can't read English. He doesn't speak English. And he said to Mitsue, he said, I read what I cannot read.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he really understood it. He really understood it, and he said, Natalie, Katagiri and Basho were on that trip with you. And he just said, you went beyond Zen to a greater understanding beyond religious practice.
Now,
and,
in the book, you mentioned that Zen had sort of lost popularity. That's not really the word, but that people in Japan weren't really following the way of Zen, and that's why some of the Zen masters came to the West.
Yes, because we wanted to practice. And after World War II, this country was destroyed, was completely decimated. And their eagerness, with their great energy, that Japanese wanted to rebuild the country. They didn't want to sit around and do Zazen or really care about Zen. But we in the U.S. were longing for another vision. So some of the great Zen teachers came over here because we wanted what they had.
Has there been any resurgence of it in Japan in more recent years?
Not the sense I have. No, I can't speak for all of Japan, but no, I don't think so. But you have to understand, Zen is also very integrated into the life there. The way of tea, I write about Rikyu, the tea master. It's very much like the idea of Zen. And I think the way they see the world is very different from us.
Well, that's one thing that I wondered about too, is when you describe sort of Japanese culture and the tea ceremony and Zen and the way of haiku, it all seems very peaceful, and yet the Japanese have a reputation of being have from World War II, obviously, and even before that,
very warlike,
warlike, very brutal. How do you reconcile those two?
Well, one way I have to say is it's all up front. I mean, they're human beings, and we have that too. We learned only recently, I think, how much violence there is in this country.
Oh yeah,
and and unfortunately, we don't have that other understanding of the value of peace. Maybe we're learning it now. We've been very spoiled. But definitely the Buddha said the highest attribute is peace. So at least it's understood. And also there's an acceptance of impermanence, the truth of impermanence, that nothing lasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helps in some way.
So, Mom, I've been kind of monopolizing things a little bit. Did you have some questions before we run out of time?
Well, I've just been sitting here writing haiku.
You want to share with us?
Well, I have regrets, some regrets in my life of things that I should have done with people at the last minute that I didn't do, and it's too late. And this, I wrote this one. Old friend from long ago, we should talk again soon.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Wow.
I got the chills.
Oh.
And I have to do that. I have to get in touch with some people.
No, you don't need to explain anything. It's all in that haiku. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Keep going.
Wow. And, Mom, you mentioned you found some haiku that I had written years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember. How old was I? Was this like from grade school?
I don't know. As Monica knows, I am a pack rat, and so I keep everything, and I come by it naturally. And so these are some of, she writes, this is Japanese poetry called haiku. It needs no title. It has no rhyme. It has 3 lines. The first has 5 syllables, second 7, and the third 5. The white puffy clouds are floating through the blue sky like nice little lambs.
Oh.
People love haiku. It's just amazing.
And this one, I like this one. With great dignity, the eagle settles upon the cliff above me.
Oh, nice.
Well,
nice.
This was long enough ago, I don't remember it at all. So I'm guessing it was, and if you have it, it must have been from my childhood at some point.
Well, it's pretty good handwriting. It's pretty good handwriting, so it was...
So it means also it was taught probably in school.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, I need to go.
And we do too. We are out of time.
Okay. This was totally wonderful, and I hope people in Iowa read 3 Simple Lines.
I hope so too, and I think they will.
Oh yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. So, Mom, do you have your closing quote for us?
Well, this is because we're in Iowa now, and it is 25 degrees outside. And this is from her book. One cold day to another, linked like a freight train, cannot see the end.
Thank you so much for being with us, Natalie.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
And see you all next week on Writers' Voices.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.